All right. Hello, everybody. This is Beard of Darkness Book Reviews, and I have a very special guest today, indie author Mars G Everson. How are you today? I guess it's the afternoon. So, how are you this afternoon?
Awesome. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here talking
Absolutely.
books.
Yes, absolutely. We've kind of had a plan for a little while, and I'm glad that it's finally here. What have you been up to? Are you writing right now? Or are you working on your
Third book, yeah.
third book?
Well, third book in this trilogy. I have a lot more books and I have more works in progress that I can count probably. But yeah, I'm finishing the third book in this trilogy. So I'm hard at work on that because I put myself a hard stop, hard deadline by Christmas. I have to put it out. So I have no free time. I am dedicated entirely to that.
Now, we were talking before we came on live, and you're a family man.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
have
love.
wife and two kids. That doesn't leave a lot of time for writing.
That's what I was kind of
So
getting to. You've got this
yeah,
family life, and you're also doing writing, and that takes up a lot of your time, which is another huge reason I love to talk to indie authors. You know, you guys are very busy, but still decide to choose ambition and passion and follow those dreams.
yeah, totally. Luckily, I started writing a long time before I settled down and got a family. So I had actually this first book in this trilogy, I had written it like 5 or 6 years ago. And I had like written like a third of book two also. Then my kids were born, work, kids, and all that got in the way. And then last year I got back into it. So I did kind of a rapid release of book one and book two, and now I'm working on book three. So it's likely I was able, some people say, hey, how did you write and publish 2 or 3 books in 1 year? Well, I'm cheating kind of. I actually wrote them a way back. But the cool thing as an author is that sometimes you think, oh, I'm gonna go back to something I wrote a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's gonna be good. I don't know if I'm gonna regain that rhythm. And for me, I've been writing for so long that uh, I trust myself completely. Right? I
Wow.
know that I know what I'm doing. I used to be more of a plotter where I sat and plotted an entire, wall of things, and now I work with more of a brief outline, and I let my characters do the acting and the talking and all that, and
Wow.
I just follow them, and
So
seems to be seems to be doing good for me.
yeah, the characters are wonderful in the first book. I haven't made it to your second book, but the characters are well developed. It's a dark spot in this literary world. It's beautifully dark. It's the
Mhm.
kind of dark that, I mean, the thralls of a tyrant god. When I seen the title, and I can say so for Mr. John Douglas too. He loves the title also. He habitually finds himself in here first, and I really appreciate him dropping by and commenting
Hi,
already.
Sean.
Hail Beardo and Hail Mars. I've gotten him interested in the book, I think. Um,
Awesome.
so what a wonderful title. I mean, I was talking to my wife about it, who is not a fantasy fan, and she's like, I like it. And I said, no, I love it because you kind of, I mean, it's kind of the same when you come up with fantasy names. As somebody who's dabbling in writing myself, that's a hard thing to do, and to come up with an original title,
Mhm.
especially with that hits home so well. I think you've done a wonderful job with that. So
Yeah,
we've got.
you're lucky. You're lucky you don't know the original title
I
because it
think
was a
you mentioned
complete,
it to me.
big. No, I meant no. Book two also had a different title. Uh, I think what yes, you said one of the hardest things to do is find the right title for a book. I usually just when I'm working on them, I usually have like a standing name. I put something just to name the Scrivener file or something. And then when you get to understand where the story is taking you and what the characters are telling you, you then find out what the title should be. Same thing happened to me with the first two covers for this book. I had an idea of what I wanted on the cover, And when I actually finished the writing the book, and I said, okay, this is like the coolest thing I can put on the cover, and
Hmm.
it still represents the book, even if you don't try to be like too too constrained by what happens in a book when you put it on the cover, or even when you put it on the title. You want it to be cool and kind of set you in a mood, right? So I think
Mm.
the title plus the cover put you in that mood of saying, okay, there must be some heavy metal shit going on here.
Hmm. No,
something
yeah.
where something where you're gonna face dark, angry gods and mobs of enemies or something like that.
I like
Uh,
how you also kind of with your gods, you put a humanistic. We have all desires, and they're maybe not always. In fact, a lot of the time, even if we don't act on those desires, they stem from a very personal, maybe devious spot, and that theme comes through with the gods. I love that because you talk a lot about what's the word that you use, like hoarding or obsession, something along those lines. And
mhm.
I like that theme that you've went with.
Yeah, and honestly, like I never set out to write a grimdark book, right? I'm not writing to market. I started writing this title before, like as I said, 5 6 years ago. I don't remember when I started book one,
Hmm.
and I didn't even know if grimdark was a thing yet, or
Right.
it was a label yet. It's just like lit RPG that blew up a couple years later. I always wrote this as thinking about, okay, what is something cool that I can do that is very character based. It has some darkness, but it's not grimdark for the sake of being grimdark, not just to fit in a label and to put it on a shelf like that. It's just what the story needed, right? I wanted to have a very anti-hero
Yeah.
protagonist that sometimes it starts out mostly as a villain, then you start to understand his motivations, what happened to him, and really that this world uh, forced him to be that. But in a
Yeah.
way, he also chose to be that. He could have just been a thrall, a slave, something like that, and he chose to rebel and to want more, and that led him to do awesome, good things, and also a lot of bad things. Uh, so um, so it's not like torture porn, grim dark book, right?
Right.
It's more that the setting, the world itself is very dark, but the people in them, are, I hope that they are realistic people and they have motivations and they each are trying to do the best and to survive. Um, and book two and three are still dark, but you sense the world is changing a little bit and the
Okay.
characters are changing a little bit, and it's not uh, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, let's say. It's
Okay.
still dark, but you start to see the world changing, the gods impacting the world and the characters impacting the gods, and it starts to all come together, and it goes like book one is, oh, there's Matt.
Yeah, I
Hey,
was
Matt.
just about to say the guy that got us together just started to come in, man.
Good, good. Like book one is like very grim, and book three is more like epic fantasy. It's so there's a progression where the world actually changed. And I know that there is a risk because sometimes you say, okay, people want to read in that genre and say, okay, book one is more Malasan Black Company thing, and book three is kind of more in the trending towards Sanderson Storm like archive, right?
Oh, wow.
It's more epic in that sense, but it's still dark. It's not the PG-13 version. It's still
Okay.
dark, but uh, I don't think that the world should be the same after everything that happens, right? If your world is still shit in book three after a lot of things went through, uh, you probably didn't have an impact on that world. So maybe if when you write a green dark tale, which characters are like regular people and they don't have a lot of like political power or like power, magical power, or whatever. It's it makes sense that they cannot change the world and turn it into something better. But in my world, there are gods impacting that, and in that way, there will be a change in the world where it's not that dark and it gets better at some point. It will get a lot worse before it gets better.
Okay, so you've kind of made, from what I hear, you're taking a story that kind of naturally taken its own course through your writing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I didn't. I didn't set out to, as I said, to write a dark book. And the characters told me, "Hey, we are gonna change this world. We're not gonna let it keep being shit, right? Otherwise, it would be very, very, very boring."
yeah, I like the fact that I can look forward to not only enjoying the rest of book one, but also a change in kind of what Matt Bards and Books stopped by and said, "Hey guys, looking good. Thank you, Bards." I
Thank
need to
you. I
find out
showered
his.
today just for you.
There you go. I need to find out his real name because I just call him Bards and Books. But we got Matt here that says a very interesting concept, kind of touching what I was just talking about, and said, I'm not sure I've seen genre change throughout a series. This makes me more excited about the series.
Yeah, I love mixing, matching genres. So I have another work in progress that's like a very, very big. That's a chunky book. This one is a little chunky book, but I have another one that is like double or triple that size that I've been working on for a couple of years, and that's like a mix of sci-fi and fantasy. So I always like to try to mix things up and not write books that are like you know set on a square label. I write I like because that's the kind of book I like to read. I enjoy a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, but I'm also a very big literary fiction reader. So I read all kinds of genres, and I read from Japanese authors, Chinese authors, Indian authors, whatever. And I like mixing genres and trying to challenge people's preconceptions. So I'm not setting out to write a 20 book series about one character in a setting like a regular uh, thriller series where you have one protagonist that doesn't change and it's just like an episodic thing. I want to write impactful stuff. So that's why I like to play around with readers' expectations also.
So I like that a lot, and I think lots of people will too. So we know Thralls of a Tyrant God is book one. What's book number two's name, and what is the series name?
Book two is called Pawns of a Cruel God. So that's the one that I told you I changed the title like a month before before release. So I had to change the title and the cover. I got the cover like very little time before the actual release because I wanted them to have like a parallel in the titles. And book three, which comes out, book two came out in late August 28th, and book three is gonna be coming out by Christmas. So you have something on your Christmas tree.
Yeah.
It's called it's called Heralds of a Fallen God.
Oh
So it
man.
takes a lot of time to find the right title that also doesn't betray what happens in the book, right? Which also sounds cool and makes you want to read it. And also, there's so many books on Amazon that finding a title that doesn't reminisce you of any other and has its own
True.
thing is also
Yeah.
difficult.
That was
And
I
the
had. I'm
title,
sure.
yeah, and the series title of this trilogy is The God Engine. Um, and you may ask, okay, engine, what does it have to do with gods and more of a fantasy setting?
Absolutely.
You're gonna have to read to find out.
I love that answer. I love that answer. That's a great answer because it's naturally curious. It makes me want to know why its name is the God Engine. I mean, it's just
Yeah, so I told you I like to switch and to mix genres, so you will understand.
Awesome. I can't wait to tell you that I understand. I'll send that straight to you the moment I do.
And I can't wait for your reaction to it when you finish book one.
That has to be so cool as an author, knowing that you're going to get a reaction from me who's naturally interested in what you're writing already. That has to be cool, right? It has to kind of be like something you look forward to.
Yeah, that's something that I think that as authors we cannot tell enough. Sometimes authors want to be like on their ivory tower and sound like they are great and awesome and that they don't care about little humans and their you know their their acknowledgments. But every author loves getting a comment on social media or an email or anything saying that you enjoyed the book. Now I think as an author, I say, hey, I should have written to a lot of these guys that I love their books, but I don't get like Ursula Le Guin's email and Tolkien is dead.
Sure.
Uh, but I should reach out to the live ones and actually tell them, hey, I loved your I loved your book, because I got a couple of emails from my beta readers and ARC readers saying how they enjoyed it. Plus, the Amazon reviews and you guys, really hyping things up, and it really helps a lot because it's a very lonely work. I usually write like 11 p.m. After I put my kids to bed and before I go to sleep. Sometimes I fall asleep at the at the keyboard and I start like
Yeah.
deleting the last word that I
Oh yeah,
wrote,
you
or
wake
kind of.
up and everything's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
It's hard work, and so it's really nice when you get awesome comments about that. One of my beta readers told me, "Thank you for writing the most beautiful sentences that I read this year,"
Wow.
and and that was awesome because I try to have my books have that literary feeling, that prose, where
Yes.
it's well developed. It's not just action adventure, though it has a lot of that. The books have a lot of that, but they also have. I try to have a beautiful prose, not all the time because don't want to do a lot of purple prose, but mix things up and have more of a blunt, you know, chapter or blunt couple of paragraphs, and then you have some beautiful insight into one character or some beautiful sentence that you're gonna make the readers to remember that. So that's nice. Usually, you don't think about like especially like grim dark books. You say, okay, I don't feel that beautiful should be the phrase for that.
No, but
But
I know
really,
it's
no, I
exactly what you're saying.
yeah, and I've been reading like Shaw Abercrombie's The Shattered Sea trilogy. I
Oh,
haven't read
he's
Shaw's
wonderful, isn't
other
he?
books. Yeah, I still haven't read the 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 First
First
Law
law.
trilogy. I have that, yeah, but I've been reading that one, which is more young adult. It's young adult grimdark, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've heard that
but
it's
he has some
YA, but
beautiful.
it's sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead, my
I think. Yeah, I think there's it's just labels for booksellers, man. It's
well,
just
what I
to
hear is
readers,
it's
it doesn't make
labeled
sense.
that, but it doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily follow that YA feel.
yeah,
I've
yeah. And probably a lot of what you call now YA is, I've been reading fantasy books since the 80s, and I've read a lot of classics like, David Eddings, Margaret Weiss, and Tracy Hickman. I love them. Like Richard Knack, Stephen Lawhead, all the 80s and 90s heavyweights.
yeah,
And you never said, okay, this is grim, dark, young adult. It was all
it's a
fantasy.
marketing scheme.
Yeah, it was all fantasy, and some of those books were really dark, really
Yeah,
adult, and some of them were very, like now you would say the Wheel of Time. You could say
yeah.
that's kind of young
Me,
YA or whatever
I kind of
in
put two
some sense.
classes like there's Walmart books, like I
Yeah,
don't know, there's like Walmart books. You've got like V.E. Schwab, and then you've got a couple other female. I'm not going to name names because I respect them all, but
Mhm.
I guess I did name a name, but I won't name any more names. But you've got your Walmart books, and then you've got the books you'll never find at Walmart, and that's what I'm interested in. And I don't, if something's YA, if that's the way they want to market it, it's not. unfortunately, I think that prevents a lot of people from reading it, but I also think that it shouldn't. I,
Yeah, but also for like what you're writing in a niche, and you find people that are very, passionate about that uh, genre. That's awesome, because like I say, I didn't set out to write the grimdark trilogy with this, but then I sent the book to Grimdark magazine, and I got it reviewed by them. I said,
yeah,
hey, yeah, I think
wonderful
it
establishment, by the
fits
way.
it fits right into the kind of book that they review. So I think it can help us, but I don't want to say, okay, I'm
Yeah,
the the grimdark author, and all my books are
you're
going to
not
be
putting yourself
like
in a
that.
box.
No, actually, after this, which is a very draining trilogy because it's very dark, I need to take a breather. I'm gonna write a novella. That's more. It's not cozy fantasy, but it's like very light, feel good fantasy. I need that as a palate cleanser
Hmm.
before I keep writing
Oh
something else,
yeah,
because otherwise your mind kind of gets stuck in a rut, and you get stuck into that. So I'm gonna move on that, and then move on to an epic fantasy, a more classic epic fantasy book, and I'm gonna keep switching things up. I have works in progress that are sci-fi. I have sci fantasy. I have that are different things that I take out of a drawer
I
and
love
keep
that, and
keep
I'm looking
writing.
forward to your really anything you write because you've touched a little bit on it. Somebody sent you some feedback. Excuse me. Um, you have a beautiful prose, is what I'm getting at. You do. I was talking to another author. I think it was Joseph Sale yesterday, and he was touching on he used to be a reviewer, and there's lots of weight to put good reviews on books, and there is. It's an incredible weight. What I found myself doing is being more selective. That way, I'm not saying I won't be critical of a book if I don't like it, but I'm less. I've read enough by now that I kind of understand what I'm getting into before I read it. Not to
Mhm.
say I'm afraid to give a bad review. I'm not, and it's not a bad review. Like, for instance, there has been times where a review has been nice, or no, it was kind, but it wasn't a nice review, and it encouraged me to read the book.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know really why I brought that up, but
You were talking
you
about beautiful prose and shows,
yes, you're right. I love your prose. And I was telling you before we come on, I take chunks at a time because I love a dark book. And this isn't like what you called, what you call like violence porn or something like that.
torture porn. It's not
Torture
torture
porn. Yeah,
porn. Grim
it's
dark.
not that. I've read darker books violent as far as violence goes, but there's nothing happy about this world so far. I mean, you've got mothers giving up babies because they can't feed themselves. It's just it's dark, and I take like I was telling you, I've taken chunks at a time just because if I read, I can't comprehend all the politics and all the things that I will love about this book if I read it straight through. And I think that's important with I mean, everybody is their own person, and I think all that feedback is good for you
Yeah.
because I don't know what you set out to do or what your goal is. That's a personal thing, but I think that the reader has a responsibility if he calls himself or herself a reviewer to let you know little things like that. Wonderful
Mhm.
prose, and I'm going through it at a slower pace. Well, I'm a slow reader anyway, but
Mhm.
what I'm reading is how do I think I said it good. The prose is wonderful and I'm having a great time with it. But if I read it, I won't appreciate everything
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
it's not a long book. Uh, it's not a huge book. It's let's see how many pages. Like
350 something pages.
yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got way bigger books that I've gone through super fast because that's how they read. Um,
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
doesn't read
totally.
that way.
I've been reading, as I said, show Abercrombie's Shattered Sea trilogy the last couple of months, and I was reading like one chapter at a time every couple of days
Yeah,
because a lot of things happened in it, and I always also like to read read different things. It's I've been reading for so long that I don't usually like want to burn up a book in like 2 days, right? I'm reading 2 or 3 things at the same time. I want my
Yes.
on my nightstand I have like 10 books plus
Do you carry
manga,
books
comic
around with
books,
you, like to
everything.
the grocery store, like I do?
No, because now I always keep 1 or 2 on my bedside table, because otherwise, if I take them somewhere, then I forget it, and when I'm going to bed, I don't have the book that I wanted to read. So I have a couple of books on my nightstand that only to read at night, and then I have like another in my office where if I have like 5 minutes or I'm on the stationary bike, I will pick them up, and then I have a lot of ebooks on my cell phone. I used to carry my Kindle, but then it always run out of
Yeah,
battery or something, so I just
sure.
have them up on my cell phones have gotten bigger, so
It's like
comfortable to
my
read.
therapy, I think. It's like my
Yeah,
wife, like if I get really nice book mail, which I do all the time, and I'm sure I did it with yours. Like when I first get a book, or if I'm really into a book, I know damn well that it's illogical as all get out, that I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to have time to read it if I go to Walmart. I'm not going to have time to read it if I go to the doctor's office, because I mean, it's the doctor's. But I'll
yeah,
still be holding on to it. I don't know. It's just like this like
yeah,
subconscious thing that I just feel comfortable. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I try to when I know that some books are like a lighter read, I'll read them on my phone, and when things are a little more complex, I will read them paperback at night in bed. But for example, I think I read like book 3 of the Stormlight Archive, the entirety of it on my cell phone, which I think is it's
Wow.
like 1,000-page book, so
Yeah, it's
it's a lot.
huge.
But I didn't want to wait until the paperback or whatever, and I just flew through it on my cell phone. So I think cool thing is that now you can have books that you can enjoy at different points, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have like 10 minutes when I'm waiting for my kids at school or at the supermarket or whatever. In line on the supermarket, I'll just read a couple of pages out on my cell phone, and then when I get home, I will read the the longer things. Yeah, that's
Michael F.
that's
Kane says
really
that's
long.
a long book for it is, bro. Like so the my biggest hurdle as far as when I first started doing this was time management. And then it was most authors in the indie realm like to send ebooks. That's comfortable. It's not as expensive. I get it. But at first, I didn't have a Kindle. I do now, and I utilize it. And I still like the physical book, but I still read more efficiently if I have the Kindle.
Mhm.
But it was funny because I was carrying it around, and I, I couldn't read on my cell phone. I would start reading and I would get this mind splitting like headache. So
Mhm.
kudos to you on being able to do that, because I
Yeah,
tried, I really did, and the Kindle's all right though.
yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, I have so little time that I have to get the reading in whenever I can. And now, when I'm writing a book, I do very little reading. So, I mean, I don't get the time to sit down at night for 1 hour or 2 to read a book. So I mostly just read in those dead spaces that I find during the day, and
as a
mostly
dad,
on
right?
my cell phone. Yeah, I mean, I have to work. I have to take my kids places.
Yeah, that's
So,
what one of the biggest things for me is, like, as a dad, you just don't have the time, not even close. Like it's just overnight. I have my fourth child coming, and any day now, really. And
fourth,
yeah.
you're my hero. I have two, and I
So
don't I don't dare
I've got
go
a
over that.
4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old boy, all three boys. And then I've got my first girl coming. Like I said, any day. My wife would call me right now and be like, "Hey, I'm having a baby," and I'd be like, "You're probably right." She's 39 weeks pregnant. But
Oh my
yeah,
god.
as a dad, you just it's beautiful. I would never change it for the life of me. I never thought I'd have 4 children. Like I
Yeah,
never saw that future. There's lots of things that go into that. I wasn't so smart in my younger
yeah.
ages, and I've had some dark times. And I think that's why I relate to grimdark so much, or not even
Mhm.
grimdark, just themes that are darker. Grimdark, I mean, there's no specific definition for that. It's totally subjective.
Yeah.
Um, So I
Yeah,
just relate to it. I had dark times in my life. So these themes, I'm like, I remember feeling that way, or I remember doing something like that, or thinking something like that. So for me, it
yeah,
kind of puts in my mind, oh, I was here at this point, and I know what it took to get to this point, and I remember being where this character is. So it's really kind of refreshing, and it shows me some insight into myself, and makes me happy. So I take this
yeah.
darkness, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that being a parent also, uh, it's not that they always say, okay, write what you know versus completely inventing things, but some things about relationships and parenting, you cannot write them really realistically if you don't have that experience. And
Yes.
talking about giving up a child or losing a child
Ooh,
or
that hits
adopting a
home for
child or
you or
whatever.
me.
Yeah, I cannot. I'm not a big crier, um, but I cannot watch movies with dogs or where
Yeah,
something
sure.
happens to where they kidnap a kid or something, because that
It
really
hurts.
hits you hard. Before I was a parent, I probably didn't feel anything about that. Well,
It was
about dogs,
purely
yeah,
entertainment at that point, right? And now
yeah,
it's like, ooh,
yeah. Now you relate in a different way. So writing, I wanted to write some interesting family dynamics. Usually in some books, like the romantic interest or the children or whatever are just you know canon fodder, or like in the comic worlds, they say it's like the women in refrigerators meme, where one character was just killed just to do a brutal murder and give motivation to the
so you
character. And I don't like that. I want each character to have their own life and their own motivation, not just be there to propel the badass character forward, right?
Timothy Wolf popped in here as he always
Hey,
does.
Tim.
Yeah, another indie author, fabulous. Thank you for stopping in. It's always good to see the lizard man. That's what I've come to know. That Timothy's here is the second book in his work there with the lizard man on
That,
front. I said,
that's
that's,
that's
that's
an
Jim.
awesome cover, by the way.
It is. It is. It's
Very
wonderful.
original.
So you read on your phone. John Douglas, he writes on his phone. You guys are another species, and I have to put
I
this out there. I talked to E.C. Greaves. This guy, I have to grab it now. Wrote this trilogy on his phone. Sorry, it's green,
uh,
so it's gonna like sink into my green screen here. But
I couldn't really do that. What I do is that I
this whole
changed my
thing on his
workflow.
phone.
No, that's too much. I changed my workflow a lot of times, but maybe if I get like a small Bluetooth keyboard, I would be able to do that. But what I do with my cell phone is just shut down some ideas or some cool turn of phrase that I come across. I just write it down on my cell phone, and then But I used to have like a whole process where I sat down in front of Word, and then I started using Scrivener or whatever other system, and now it's just it's kind of shameful. I use Notion, which is a productivity tool, but you have an app on your phone and it syncs automatically, so I don't have to worry about clicking save every 2 minutes to not lose a page of work.
That's
I just
huge.
write in Yeah, I just write in Notion on my desktop. It syncs to my cell phone automatically, and then if I want to write something on cell phone, it syncs back, and then I just export it, polish it up in other software.
This is one of those
So
things that I'm like, I told you before we start. I started to interrupt you, but like, there's so many things that I keep learning. And gosh, man, I feel so lucky because that app sounds amazing for when I do start writing. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I think some when I started a long couple of years ago, uh, I used to think, oh no, to write I have to get into the right headspace and use the correct writing software, and everything has to be very OCD. And
Yeah.
then when I had kids and I didn't have time for anything. You
Yeah.
kind of you kind of say, okay, throw that shit out. I'm gonna use whatever is the more efficient and fast way for me to do things. So
Sure.
I kind of overhauled my entire workflow. I used to use Scrivener a lot, and put a lot of binders with a lot of different
You're fine.
things and ideas and stuff. And now I just simplified my workflow a lot. And
I love that.
as you have to do that.
And so, well, you've learned, you've evolved as a man, as a writer, as a dad, all at the same time. It sounds like that's to be acknowledged. So,
Yeah.
what would you classify your novel's subgenre? I know we've said a lot of grimdark, but what else would you say? I know you're going into an epic fantasy. You've done sci-fi. Um,
Yeah.
would you
I,
touch
I
a little
also
bit?
wrote Yes, I also wrote a lot of literary fiction under another pen name. Um, so I like really a lot of genres. The only genres that I haven't really done are like no wait I have I was gonna say I haven't done any thrillers, but I did one kind of thriller that had
Okay,
some kind of X-Files stuff,
I
and
loved that show.
yeah, and I haven't written any like romance or erotica or something, but I have put like chapters inside books that are kind of like that.
So
So I
you,
always like to flex different muscles.
Mr. Christopher Navo, another great booktuber, and will be a
Hey, Chris,
soon author. He is an author, but he will be releasing his book, I believe, sometime very soon. If you'd like to
and
let me know
I'll
that.
be very anxious to see your books when they come out. I think
He's very
if
well spoken.
YouTube or any kind of this thing had been a thing like 10 years ago, I would have started doing this. But
Well,
when I started
it's
writing, there was nothing like booktubers or anything like that. It was just, I think Goodreads was out there, but not
so
much
I
more than that.
discovered my love for reading at 29. I turned 33 in November. So as do the math, I haven't been reading very long.
You're a newbie. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But what I found out first through reading John Gwynn specifically was that I absolutely wanted to write because I can see myself creating these characters and having lots of fun doing it. Uh, and so I started to process how to do that as an indie, um, as a self-published author, because that's the way that I wanted to do it. Uh, I wanted to get a,
That's a good choice, by the way,
I
because
wanted to,
I struggled for years with the publishers. I actually got a contract signed with one of the major uh, publishing houses, and then things went to shit. It got voided because it was badly thought out contract from an editor, and so I
not
said,
my first time
screw
hearing that.
yeah, screw this. I'm not gonna go through the hamster wheel of 5 more years of getting my books out. I said I have the skills to do this. I can learn the things that I need to learn about marketing, about formatting and all that. And
Hell yeah.
once you know that, you feel really empowered, and you say, okay, maybe if some offer comes along at some point, I will think about it, but I wouldn't give up the autonomy that you have. So
Ooh,
I think now that you're talking to a lot of different authors, you're going to learn a lot and say, okay, yeah, do I think I
well,
can do it? Yeah, you probably can.
I'm gonna try to get a following of genuine people who want to genuinely see me succeed, and that's what I'm trying to do by having people on my channel because I genuinely care about you and what you're doing. I see what you're doing behind the scenes, uh, and I just hope that when I do decide to publish a book, that just follows me and the people and connections that I make. So this is my route, and I'm having such a good time doing it. Honestly, I absolutely love talking to you.
Yeah, and the writing community really, I think it's very different. Like I said, I started on this road like more than 12 years ago. I think I wrote my first novel for NaNoWriMo on 2008. Yeah,
Wow.
2008. So it was a very long time ago. That book is actually also out. It was kind of a stealth launch because Thralls is not my debut book. Uh,
Oh, I'm
the
sorry. I did put that in
I
one of our questions. I didn't know
now,
that.
but because I kind of did a stealth launch of that one, and it's up for the for the SPS fees. Sorry,
SPFBO
SPS FC3. it's it's a
3
mouthful. Yeah, that's self-published science fiction blog,
blog
whatever.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, blog of yeah, I signed that up this year, and that one is more of a. It's very different. It's more of a mix between Isaac Asimov and Ursula Le Guin, which is called The Name of the Shadow, and it's more like classic sci-fi. And that book I wrote it back in 2008, so I learned a lot since that time. And at the beginning, like the writing community of self-publishers, it was very small. Uh, Amazon was like kinder to self-publishers because you could do a free promo and you got a lot of sales.
Yeah.
And now, yeah, that doesn't happen. There's a lot more competition, and that's good. And the quality has really the quality bar has risen a lot.
Yeah.
But what I found, like jumping back into it, like last year, was that the writing community, like the indie community, is awesome. There's a lot of
Beautiful.
collaboration. Yeah, I basically I didn't know anyone. What I just did was just go into Twitter and start, talking to people, reaching out to guys like you and Chris and Matt, and saying, hey, I got this book. I think it's really cool. Would you like to read it? And I never expected. I expected like booktubers and magazines and everything to be just like, oh no, guys, there's a lot of self-published guys out there. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
read
and
your stuff.
understand this. There's so many people who do this out of pure passion. You're talking to one of them because look, I don't get paid to do any of this. I have zero in that. Like I put money into this. I don't get anything out of it yet. I hope one day
Yeah,
that
and most authors lose money for the first couple of years.
yeah, exactly, absolutely. And my goal was to and it still is and forever will be to I mean market and promote people who I look up to, and that I mean is indie authors. That's what I'm doing here. So I love that. I love that we kind of as a community, as you touched on a little bit, it's a consensus. It's something we all kind of believe in. And I think that if you aren't in it for the passion of it, the desire to help and not compete and just enjoy everybody and just really be a cheerleader for everybody.
Yeah, totally.
And
And I
be
think
positive.
that that people, like a few years back, I think it was more of a landscape where people wanted to compete a lot, and now it's more like a marathon. And I think there's kind of the implied understanding that we are not competing with Stephen King or
Yeah,
with Brandon Sanderson. Really, they're gonna sell their books. Uh, we're not
based
really
on their
competing with
name.
them, but we're not competing also against the other guys. And we're not competing with the guys on this stream with Timothy, you, Sean, or you guys when you launch your books. We're competing with Netflix. We're competing with sports. Everything that is out there that takes time out of people's entertainment. And so if we are really excited about books and we show other readers, hey, these books are awesome, check them out, we're going to create more readers. It's like the J.K. Rowling effect. How many kids started reading because of that, and now you have those kids moved on to more adult works.
Right.
So it we're probably not going to have that same effect with 200 self-publishers, right? But if we manage to capture more of people's minds and turn them into readers, like it happened to you at 29, how many people have never read 2 or 5 full books in their life, like until they are 50 or until they retire and they have time on their hands. There's a lot of people like that. If you convert them, we're gonna get more readers for everyone. And there's 8 billion of us. There's not a lack of readers.
Right.
And I think that in the self-published space, especially in fact, that's a good point that
It is a good
Timothy
point.
Timothy makes. If you read like a really cool book by I don't know by Shaw Abercrombie, you may say, hey, I want more books on this type, but I cannot wait 2 years until the guy publishes another thing. Let's see what else is out there, and then
Yeah.
we'll find our books. And I think in the the fantasy and sci-fi space, the indie books that I've read, are so much more original than what is coming up. And I think the other day I read something about, there wasn't on Twitter. I don't remember there was another indie author that said it, that there were barely any epic fantasy being published by any of the big publishers. And I
Yeah.
said, yeah, and a guy, you can explain like a guy like Ryan Cahill's success, because there wasn't any. It's very like mainstream epic fantasy book, like in the vein of the Wheel of Time or something like that.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been anything like that in the last 10 years. So of course there was some pent up demand for that kind of book. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things in the indie space that can fill in those cracks of major publishers saying, okay, we just want big thrillers, or the next female YA author, because that's going to sell a million books.
Yes.
And there's not much space for like speculative fiction, or very heavy SSF books. And I think that's the niche that we need to capture. And it's not like there are 10,000 people that read those kinds of fantasy books that we love. There's millions, and if we can make that number even bigger, that's great. It's just a matter of, and I think the stigma around indie publishers or indie authors has really mostly disappeared. So I think if we capture the minds and hearts of those readers, and we do it as a community, I think we will all grow in some way.
I think
And yeah,
Chris.
Chris is makes a very good point.
Yeah, quite frankly, I've been enjoying myself. Yes, far more than popular traditional. Yeah, absolutely. I feel. Look, I don't try to put any politics into what I do here, because listen, we all have politics, and I think that's a personal thing. But I can't read Stephen King anymore without there being just a bunch of politics in it. That is just a separate side of my life that I'm escaping when I read a book. And I think that my Walmart books that I like to say are just full of it.
Mhm.
And I have seen the exact opposite with indie fantasy. I love it. There's politics in the book, but it's not our politics. I don't have to hear about COVID. I don't have to hear about what president you hate and why and all this BS. So
Yeah,
that's one of my biggest reasons for reading.
yeah. If we write and read fantasy and sci-fi, it's because there is a level of escapism, but it's very hard to write well about current events without sounding preachy.
Yeah,
And the way an author does that is like the way like Margaret Atwood does it, or how Ursula Le Guin did it back in the 70s, like write about topics that are universal, and or that are highly political. Like Ursula Le Guin's books are very political, but they're not preachy, because they talk about things that are, even if it's another planet, it's all deeply human. And you will think about the big issues. You will think about capitalism, or the sexes and all that. You will think about that, but in a setting that takes you out of that
yeah, I like the word
reality.
that you're using, preachy. Preachy. Yeah, I don't want to know necessarily what the author chooses to believe in, because I want that to be left up to me based on the facts that I'm given, that is explored or not explored. Um,
I'm a big comic book reader too. I grew up on the X-Men, all that. Then I moved on to also like Japanese manga and all that. And I
mhm.
think that the way that fantasy helps is in the way, like, for example, the X-Men. You think about the X-Men, and it's just guys and girls in tights with superpowers. Uh, but they probably taught a couple of generations more about acceptance and about tolerance than if than any amount of scholarly works
Yeah,
about those topics. Because you say, hey, why are the humans hating on this mutant? He's just a little different.
yeah,
uh, that probably impacted a hell of
that's
a lot more
beautiful.
people than anything else. So I think that we have some of that responsibility of talking about major issues in a way that doesn't reflect current reality. That
I like that
it it,
take.
re- it reflects what what you as a human outside of your context of your country and whatever, how you would feel in that fantastic atmosphere. And that may impact how you think about your life. There's a lot of people who have changed ideas on anything, like due to fiction. And I think that's our power and responsibility as authors, to give that escapism. Really good books that don't strive to talk about big issues. And but I think in the fantasy and sci-fi space, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of big issues, spoken about in a good and interesting way.
I totally agree with you, and I think that you really hit home the point that I was trying to make with a better word, the preachy point. I don't mind bigger themes and real world issues, but the preachy part is where it's like, is there an agenda behind this? So that's the stuff that I try to stay away from. But so I like that. Is there a character in your novel, any of your novels that well not any, because now I've learned that you've got quite a few. Um, in this God Engine trilogy, is there any characters that you wrote about that you based on a real person?
No, they're too. Some of them are too evil. So
Okay.
no, uh, no. I think you have that temptation when you start out as a writer, and then you read a lot, and characters start growing up like mold in your head, and they take on their own life. They may have elements of different characters, like, and you kind of tie into some archetypes. I think like Sen, the protagonist of this book, well, the main character, because there are 4 or 5 viewpoint characters that are very important too, but he's like the
Yeah,
first
he goes back to.
character that you read about. And to me, you always kind of try to tie into some other character that you like. And to me, he's a little bit like Batman, and his relationship with some of the other characters, it has something of Robin and Nightwing. So for comics people, you will, when you read it, you will get a little bit of that. But it's that kind of badass, I can do anything attitude. I'm gonna have a plan for everything, and I'm gonna beat the the other guys, and I'm gonna achieve what I want to achieve. I think that's an awesome uh, little thing that I had in my head. Like, okay, I'm not inspired. I'm not thinking about a real person. I'm thinking about another mythical character that I can kind of get some get some attitude or get some inspiration from. And he was, because of that, he was very fun to write, because
Sure.
I think probably the best writing work in the world is to write Batman, and he's a badass, So
Yeah,
writing Batman
and
is
he's
awesome.
rich.
Yeah,
So see, there's nothing he can't buy. So it's like he's got the most badass weapons. He's got everything that he wants at his disposal. So,
yeah, totally.
what is the plan for the next published date? So, book three.
Okay, so it's gonna come out by Christmas if I don't
That's
run
right. You
myself
did
into the
mention that
ground.
already.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna come out by Christmas. Then I'm gonna take a couple of days off and get started on the other things. I have like an Excel sheet with all the things that I have to write, all my
You're more
works in progress.
organized than I am.
I have, yeah, I have enough to keep me occupied until I'm 60 or something, and then I will retire, so I will have even more time.
Awesome. Well, you'll have enough work out there getting royalty and all that stuff by then that you'll be able to. That'll be wonderful. So, who are some
Totally,
favorite authors of yours?
too many. I think my my main guy is of course Tolkien. I read him when I was 12. I left him for when I was like between 12 and 18. I read all the major fantasy and sci-fi writers, right? And then for like 10 more years, I didn't read almost any fantasy or sci-fi. I exclusively went for literary fiction or more mainstream fiction, where I could kind of stretch other muscles. So I
Mhm.
read, besides the ones that I've already mentioned before. I read a lot guys like David Mitchell, who wrote Cloud Atlas and a couple of very awesome books. I love some Japanese authors like Haruki Murakami or Kazuo Ishiguro. I like some. I read some Chinese authors that are very cool in sci-fi, like Cixin Liu and Ken Liu. Uh,
Wow.
I, I read a little bit of everything, like and more mainstream guys like Tom Wolfe, Thomas Pynchon, Paul Auster. So I, I enjoy a lot of different types of books. Now, in the last couple of years, I went back again into fantasy and sci-fi and mixing it up with more comic books and manga, which are also a great inspiration because, I think traditional like comic books from the US are kind of in a rut. It's all superhero. There are some indie gems and all that, but the manga world is awesome and it can be a very big source of inspiration to authors because it's not like one genre, it's not superheroes. You have a lot of different genres with, romance, sci-fi, and whatever. And I think that it's a great field to mine ideas from, and you have to keep mining things.
Michael makes a great point, and there's a reason that I ask that question a lot of the time, and a lot of the answers that I get is Tolkien, and there's a reason for that because without him, I was talking yesterday. It's like the weight behind. Like, can you imagine him writing? There was a hobbit who lived in a hole. Like that's how the Hobbit starts out. The weight behind those
It,
words.
and it's Hobbit Day today. It's
Yeah,
the
that's
birthday of
right. I've seen
Bilbo.
that.
It's Bilbo and Frodo's birthday and the date when they left the Shire to the Grey Havens and left Middle Earth, and that's the end of the
Okay.
third age.
That's wonderful. I didn't know that. I knew it was Hobbit Day, but I didn't know all the rest of it. Now, I'm a big movies fan,
Yeah,
a fan of the movies.
yeah,
I often tell
the
everybody I'm saving the Hobbit for my son when he turns 8.
yeah. I think the movies probably created more readers than any other thing, and I think that he's become so big that he's become underrated a little bit.
Mm.
When I went back to reading during the pandemic, I said, okay, I have this really nice chunky edition. Oh, look at
Oh,
this.
is that the
This
omnibus?
is yeah, it's a one
Wonderful.
book version. And I read this during the first months of the pandemic. And for me, it was like going back home, like in that sense, like a cozy fantasy, even though it doesn't have any, the Shire is kind of
Nostalgic.
cozy. Yeah. And it made me realize, sometimes when you go back and read a book you read when you were 12 or something, so you go back and say, it's not as good as I remember. It's like playing an
You're
old
scared
video
to read?
game. Like you go play a game that you loved when you were 12 and you say, oh, it's really bad now,
Yeah.
compared to the thing that are now. But when you go back and read Tolkien, and I started to read all the stuff that I had missed, like the history of Middle Earth and like the biographies and everything, you realize, wow, good was the guy was even better than I remembered.
Wow.
The prose, he always gets that complaint that he describes a lot or he's full of flowery language. It's not like that at all. And the way he uses language, and he uses a mix of old, like modern English that sounds like old English, that kind of thing. There's a lot of linguistic things that he could do because he was a philology teacher. And like 99% of the writers and fantasy writers that came after him cannot imitate him because they don't have that mastery of language, even though there
And
may
he
be better.
experienced a lot of bad shit. Like he was in World War
Yeah,
One and like just terrible things. So he saw the worst of what humanity has to offer. So he had an upper hand, I think.
yeah. He still wrote a book that is very uplifting, and
Uh,
it's not cynical. It's not
yeah,
cynical at all. It's very hopeful. And the movies, I think, the best thing that they reflect is that it's not a cynical world. It's a it's a world that even everything that happens in it, you would like to live in. It's not like my book. You wouldn't like to live it.
you would not like
Live
to
in
live
it.
in this world. It's wonderful to read about in a fictitious way, but I'm gonna have to pass on that vacation. But I do want to stress that there is beauty behind the darkness and the relation you make with the human condition. It often goes back to that. But as a
Yeah,
human writing it, I think it has to.
yeah. And going back to, since it's Hobbit Day, I think that that phrase from the Lord of the Rings when Sam is in the entrance of Mordor and he looks up into the sky and sees the beauty of the stars and says, even the shadow cannot reach up there and cloud the stars and mar their beauty. I think it's that kind of sense that okay, bad things happen in the world, but you know, good will at some point, balance things out, and the beauty cannot be totally destroyed. And I think that that's kind of what I wanted to represent with my book.
I
It's a dark world, but there's beauty in it.
I love that, and I can't wait to discover more of that. So, where can people? So I kind of know the answer to this question, but the answers to maybe the answer to the last question, who had a hand in your writing style? I'm sure a lot of those guys did, right?
Yeah, the guys that I mentioned all had a hand in it and all taught me a lot.
I can tell that they inspired you a lot by reading them. You had a lot of wonderful things to say about them. So I kind of just it's a fun question to ask because every answer, even if it's the same, is a little different. That may be a vague answer that I give, but in talking to many different authors, you say everybody gives me the same answer of Tolkien. They're going to take a little piece of that that's usually different. Whether
Totally.
it's his what you said flowery writing style or his way of using his terrible um, traumas in his own life to write something beautiful from it. So I like the answers that I get for that. Where can people follow you, and where can we buy your work? Where can we sign up for? I've
Uh,
got one down here for your newsletter.
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm on the the social network formerly known as Twitter or
Yeah,
X or whatever you want to call it. So you can find me there as Mars G Everson. I probably have profiles in some other places. I'm on Threads, I'm on Blue Sky, all that, but mostly I interact on Twitter and on my webpage. I love getting comments and getting email from my readers. So
I
go
will have
ahead
those links
and
in my description, by the way.
awesome. Yeah. So if you sign up there on my site, you will get a free short story collection that's sci-fi books. Sorry, sci-fi short stories, just to show a different aspect of my work.
So
And
what's
of
next?
course, all
What's
the books are on Amazon, of course.
awesome? Awesome. Yeah, that will also be in my link, my description. The links to your Amazon. So what's next for you immediately?
Oh, you know, getting to finish book three, then as I said, taking a couple of days off, writing this novella that's more like cozy fantasy. I will leave you with the title, and I don't
Please.
want anyone on this stream to steal that from me.
Yes,
So
if you do, please don't come back to my channel.
I may just create a pre-order on Amazon so that I get dibs on that title.
Wonderful.
Um, but it's gonna be called The Last Book of the Elves.
All right.
Uh,
That's
so uh,
awesome. I love that.
yeah, so that's gonna be a very different book. And then the next trilogy is more a political fantasy with dragons. I didn't have any dragons in any of my books so far, so I really needed to get a dragon for
Sure.
for my.
Hey,
But
I
I
agree.
I I I needed to get. I in this the God Ancient series, it has a lot of magic, but it doesn't have like different races. It's humans. It's a kind of a post-apocalyptic world where everything is kind of shit, and
Yeah.
there are powers and gods and all that, but there are no elves, so there are no dragons, anything like that.
That's going to be
So in
so
my
fun to
next
write.
in my next couple of books, I'm gonna add more like fantasy races and stuff.
So that's awesome, man. I'm so glad you dropped that. That's going to be so fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm happy for you too. So maybe we've covered it already. I always like to give this time of the interview to let you highlight anything that maybe we didn't cover. Definitely what you just said. Is there anything else?
No, just I think that the community is awesome. Thank you to everyone who joined on the stream. I recognize some of you because I've been probably replying to your to your threads or just being a bother.
Never a bother.
um, so thank you all. Thank you to the ones who have already read my book. To the ones who haven't, try it out. I think it's really different from other
It
similar
is.
books, and you will enjoy it. If you don't, you can send me an angry email. I won't get mad about that. And I can confidently say that because I don't think I'm going to get many angry emails. I haven't got any yet.
Well, I don't think you deserve an angry email. I think if somebody disagrees with something that you write, I think that a nice way to do that or a kind way to do that. But anyway, I wanted to thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our talk. I've learned a lot, which is something that I aim to do with every one of my interviews is learn. Um, you've given me some insight to your work. I know you better through your book now. And when I continue to read your book, I'll know you better through your book. So just I appreciate you stopping by, and I appreciate everybody that was chatting and anybody that watched live and will watch in the future. So with that, anything else? All right.
It's sorry for hijacking your interview at some points. I talk a lot
No,
in my
that's
daily life.
great.
My wife says, "Hey, shut up a little. You talk too much when you're on the phone or in a video conference or something."
It's if I
Uh,
do an interview with
so
somebody who doesn't talk a lot that it's really stressful. So
yeah,
no, please, thank you.
Eh,
And
if you have an interview with one of those people that doesn't talk a lot, you can just ring me and say, "Hey, I need you to salvage this." Someone to
and
come
then I'll
talk.
ring you in. I'll send you the invite, and we'll just exactly. I'm gonna put you out. All right. Thank you.
Totally.
Well,
Put
hey,
me on the speed dial. I can any time to spice things up.
that'll work. This won't be our last talk, by the way. We'll do this again. I just want to thank you again, and everybody that
For sure.
watched. Thanks for joining Fear of Darkness book reviews, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.